and welcome to another Round the Rotary podcast with me, your host, JP Warren. And in the studio with us today, we have a buddy of mine who is deemed himself as a sales guy, if you will, or an executive salesperson for SitePro. And this is the second time we're recording this. The first time there's either technical difficulties or we didn't highlight all the points that we kind of want to highlight on. So, and the fun thing about this right now, we're recording this on Monday, February 8th. And we just opened up Clubhouse, and this is the first time I've done this. So we're doing a live Clubhouse right now, kind of doing a couple minutes before, right?
I think it's gonna be good.
We got a couple people on right now. We got Brandon, Kevin, and Trey on. And it's just kind of one of those things where we just kind of want to try something new with this new app and this new Clubhouse, and so people can kind of get the live recording, unfiltered, uncut through Clubhouse if they want to, or if not, if they don't have the opportunity to join us in Clubhouse, they can always listen to it when it gets released.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know what Clubhouse is,
go ahead.
I'll probably butcher this all day.
I don't even know what it is, so you tell me.
I'm kind of looking at it like think about it as a kind of like a town hall / maybe conference call of various subjects and topics from different industry leaders and people of interest from all over. I actually sat in on one the other day with Ashton Kutcher and some other folks. It was pretty cool.
Really?
I listened for a while, but there were a lot. Obviously it's Ashton Kutcher, so there are a lot of people on there. But it's been pretty cool. This is like our third one. I've been on 3 or 4, I think.
What, Clubhouses?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and the thing about it, what I like about it, I don't like. I do like the possibility and kind of the potential, what it can do, but I kind of wish there was more like, this morning, I was in the car, I almost opened up a Clubhouse for Houston morning commute, you know what I mean? But I was like, oh man, I don't know. Like I'm still kind of hesitant about that because I'm not sure, number one, A, what we're going to talk about, B, who's jumping on and what kind of conversation we're getting into. So I do like the whole leadership type of things and all that stuff. But at the same time, I'm kind of looking for more of just shooting the shit, just kind of like getting around the table and just kind of hearing, just whatever. It doesn't have to be like executive leaders of.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean?
The scuttle, I think, is something that we're totally missing. With the COVID and everything, we used to have all these little outlets for industry scuttle and just shooting the bull, and like the break room chats and the over lunch or bumping into people at this event or that event or happy hours and some of us are fortunate we still get to have some happy hours and do some other cool things, but having that human interaction of just getting to hear about some documentary somebody watched on Netflix,
and those type of conversations to me, that's actually really getting to know the person. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's not like, oh, what's your stance on leadership and managing, this number of people. To me, it's like you get to know the person when you find out, exactly like, what type of some people might really like, this type of documentary, or true crime or horror or whatever it is. And that's when you get to know kind of like the interest of the person.
Man, I'll tell you what, so true crime, it's kind of funny you brought that up. A friend of mine's wife is this super sweet. She's a nurse, very nice lady, very good looking. She's a mother. But basically, if it's got murder, blood, incest, theft, basically the worse the story is, the more she's just like, oh my gosh, I have to have this.
I get that though. I understand that though.
Oh my gosh. And she'll tell me about, documentaries or different things that she's watched. And I'm just like, I'm going to have to go watch like the other guys or something now just to like get set so I can go to bed. Like this is.
What shows are like that where you watch them, they're so like disturbed, like, okay, well I need to watch something else to kind of clear my mental palate before I actually.
Exactly. Yeah. It's kind of funny, serious topic, but yesterday morning, my wife and I were drinking coffee. The kids were still passed out. Sunday morning. And she's like, well, what do you want to watch? And I'm like, I don't know. Put on some YouTube or something. She's like, well, let's pick something we could both watch. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, here's the remote. I'll be over here drinking my coffee.
Yeah, it works too.
Yeah. So she puts on Hitler's Holocaust.
Okay.
And it's like a documentary about the Holocaust. I'm like, babe, it's Sunday morning. Like there's birds chirping outside. It's a bright bluebird day. I'm like, this is great stuff here. This is, very serious. We need to learn about this. But, can we not watch
Can we not
some?
watch Hitler's Holocaust?
Yes,
Which it sounds like a musical. First off, you know what I
yeah,
mean. Second off, like look, let's approach this day with a little more positivity.
yes.
Besides the genocide of millions and millions of people.
But like I love history, and so I look down and it's been like 2 hours, and I'm like, oh my gosh, okay, next, like what? Let's put on some. I don't know. So luckily, my 7-year-old wakes up and
Yeah.
comes in, and she's like, Dad, can I watch some cartoons? I'm like, yes, please put on some
Put anything on
something.
besides World War II, Hitler,
Yes.
Holocaust. Let's get this kicked off, man. Before we begin, I got to say that Round the Rotary podcast is brought to you by Capital Petroleum Consultants. CPC specialize in project engineering and well site supervision in all disciplines of the oil and gas industry. Contact us through www.capitalpetroleumconsultants.com to see what CPC can do for you today. And that's it. That's the plug right there. And I'm kind of excited about this. Again, we're doing this live on Clubhouse, and I'm pretty pumped. And also, we have something scheduled coming up on Wednesday.
That's right.
For those listening on Clubhouse now, and I think I kind of want to do more of these. So if you miss Wednesdays, I think it's going to be a weekly thing. So pretty much, we're going to be going over how Terminators from the Terminator movie franchise, the
That's right.
documentary series,
Skynet.
#Skynet, is Terminators were run by renewable energies,
All the
renewable
way.
power packs.
That's right.
And Resistance was run by oil and gas and fossil fuels.
That's right.
So it's going to be a satire kind of bullshit conversation, but it's going to be fun. You
It's
know,
gonna be epic.
it's one of those things where it's like, you're not going to run the narrative by, discussing, facts and petroleum products are in this and that. It's just going to be a fun sitting around, just like
Right.
banter, off the cuff, off the wall conversation. I'm looking forward to that. I think we can get into every other movie, whether it's Mad Max or whether it's any other 90s or 80s action movie. So
Yes.
I think it's going to be a good time.
Waterworld's sure to make an appearance.
So yes. See, this is what I'm talking about. Like this type of like group, like thinking
Oh, yeah.
right there. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a good time.
That's right.
So hey, why don't you get us kicked off, man? Why don't you give us a little brief background about yourself and how you kind of get in the oil field, and let's talk about kind of what you've been doing lately. These new ways you're kind of getting in front of people, this guerrilla marketing, and just kind of we'll go from there.
Yeah, man. So I'm a hill country guy. I originally grew up in outside of Austin, between Marble Falls and Austin, a little town called Spicewood.
Oh, we know Spicewood.
Yeah, so good place, great, God's country. Went to
Pooties.
Yeah, that's right, Pooties,
Huge
Willie's
fan of
Golf
Pooties.
Course. All the fun stuff. Willie's 9-hole is it's a goat pasture, but I will tell you, you'll have more fun out there than any
I'll
golf
bet.
course you'll go to.
I'll bet so.
And
So
you'll see stuff that you probably will never see on any other golf
I
course.
dig that.
But I went to Lake Travis.
Right.
I guess all throughout life you have these little moments through life where you kind of be like, oh, I'm where I'm supposed to be. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do.
I
So
got it figured out.
yeah, so in high school I was real active in FFA and had one of those moments, and then shortly thereafter I went to college for a little while. Wasn't for me. Wasn't real great at it.
Did you want to stay with the FFA, kind of the background of
The ag background?
Ag background.
Not really. I was, growing up in Texas and running around South Texas all the time, very, very predisposed to, the whole agricultural
Right.
scene and everything.
Right.
And I showed cattle, sheep, and goats all through school.
Okay.
The thing that really kind of got me was the leadership pieces, and then the camaraderie of that.
Yeah.
I mean, you're meeting kids from all over the state, and then when I went to Blinn for a couple years trying to get into A&M. I'm a dreamer and not a great student, and so anyway. But the cool thing was when I went to College Station, I bumped into people that I'd seen at Area 7 conventions and district meetings and state conventions, and
So
they
the
all
little
knew
network
me.
was a good
Yeah,
network.
absolutely.
You got that. Okay.
So anyway, parents said, "Hey, look, we're done paying for this because you're not taking it serious. So if you wanna keep going, you're on your own." And so I was like, "All right, well, I'm out." And so I
I
moved.
mean, that's a tough conversation to have as like an adult kid. You're like,
Oh yeah,
hey, we're done paying for it. It's like, no, what can we? No, it's one of those. It's like, yeah, okay,
yeah, and
you milk it as long as you can.
yeah, and I mean, I wanted to go, so I was gonna go. I was gonna major in construction science. I grew up in Austin, so
Right.
pretty much since forever now, late 90s, I guess, Austin has been in this huge construction boom of, custom homes and, even on the commercial side. And so,
But the landscape downtown Austin has just completely changed the
oh
last 5
yeah,
years.
I mean, it's insane, but so that's what I wanted to do is I wanted to go back home and build custom homes. And so I grew up, my dad ran a business and did, um, lots of different types of tractor work. So, dirt work, excavation, land clearing, construction site work, loan out,
So
loan
that's kind of the
outs.
path that
Yeah. And
you would
so
go.
I wanted to own my own business. And so all this time growing up in Austin, you either had, kind of three different types of people. You had all the guys that had retired
Yep.
and moved to the Lakeway area or, greater
Who go
Austin
to
area.
Cody's at 2 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, lived on the hills course in Lakeway, and that was what they did. Or the other one where you had this huge entrepreneur group in Austin. And then coming in the late 90s, early 2000s, you had essentially the Silicon Valley of Texas,
Yeah.
exploded.
There
The
was
dot-com,
Dell. There was
right?
Dell
Yeah.
there.
So you had Dell and you had tons of these startups and these huge database companies, and Oracle had a big office. And
It's still kind of like that though. Austin still has
absolutely,
that spirit. I mean, you got Elon moved there. Joe Rogan. You have all these other software companies that have
that's
started
right.
there. Yeah, I mean, it still kind of has that. It fosters that entrepreneurial spirit.
So I moved back to Austin and was like, hey, I've already been doing this. I grew up running a tractor when I was in high school. If I wasn't going to school or doing whatever, then I was, doing my own thing. And so I had some guys that I did a bunch of work for. And so I was like, you know what, I can just move back home and make some money and figure it out from there. So that's what I did. And I moved back that was in, I guess, late like '07, early '08.
Okay.
And I'm a big outdoors guy. So typically if I'm not working, I'm usually outside hunting, fishing, doing something,
Okay.
right? And so when I got back to Austin, a Dick's Sporting Goods actually opened the first one in
Up
Austin,
in the Gallery Bee Cave
in
area.
Bee Cave.
Yeah.
And so I went to work there running the hunting and fishing area. And then to kind of supplement, I don't know if you remember, but diesel was like $5.75 a gallon then. And I drove a 1-ton diesel.
So it's a pretty
And
penny to.
I would have to swipe my card twice to pay for diesel.
So you'd have
Because
to
back
pick
then
up,
they had those like $60 limits.
so you have to pick up like extra shifts to fill your
Yeah,
truck
so
up.
I was running a tractor and doing construction work and then working at Dick's in the meantime. And then when I could, it's hunting or fishing. And so, anyway, long story short, an old family friend of mine actually, uh, he was my wife's brother's friend, and we rode down to a bachelor party
Yeah.
together, actually my brother-in-law, and down to the river in New Braunfels, and he had some stuff in his truck. He said, you can ride with me, but I might have to run work, but I'll be right back. So I'll be able to take you down there.
And so you didn't know what he did.
I had no idea.
Okay.
He was Marine Recon. I did hear, I'm a long time listener. I did hear one of your guys actually say one time that he's a former Marine. I was like, ooh.
Former Marine.
Yeah, and you never say that. They're Marine till the day they die.
Yeah.
Anyway, so really nice guy. His name was John Watwitz.
Okay.
Typical name that everybody would butcher. And anyway, really nice guy. So luck would have it, I left some stuff in his truck on the trip. Came back and
It's a very standard move to get a job, especially
yes,
right now. For those listening right now to try to get a job, leave something behind so you have to meat up with that person.
that's
after.
right. Yeah.
Yes.
The Yeti cup with your branding on
Oh
it.
yeah.
Great idea.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like I equate it to like leaving an earring. And like,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not mine.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. Exactly. Oops. I just hey.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get it.
So anyway, hooked back up with him. Ended up being right around Christmas. And so he was telling me about how work was going and everything. It was great. He worked for a little company called Weltronics.
Okay.
And so those of you who don't know, Weltronics actually invented a tool called the eDrift, which ended up being the eTotco.
Okay.
And so that was the electronic wireline tool for measuring well inclination.
Okay.
And old technology now. Really cool tool, used some cool stuff. Well, they sold it to NOV and then developed this tool that I ended up going to work for. So they said they were going to need some people after the first of the year, and I left, and I was like, man, that sounds really cool, right?
So the conversation started with brother-in-law's friend.
Yeah, brother-in-law's friend.
So the conversation started kind of when you were riding the batch party with him, and then when you left something there, you just kind of, hey, what do you do? That's when the kind of natural, organic, I guess, conversation started about what he did in the oil and gas industry.
Right.
And that's kind of what led you to have a conversation with him. And he said,
yeah, he basically said, we're going to be looking for some guys, and So I sat on it for a couple of days and just thought, hey, I'm going to. I mean, it sounds like fun.
Yeah.
I mean, what am I doing right now? And so I called him and said, hey, you think, I might kind of fit that role? And he said, yeah, I think so. Do you have a resume? And I didn't really have a resume.
Yeah.
So I had to sit down and build one. And so I built one. And then I went over to Cedar Park and met. So the office was in Cedar Park, shop and everything. That's where we built the tools, ran the ops, the whole 9 yards. So, I mean, it was a very, very small shop right now. And so we had, I don't know, maybe like 6 of us at the time. And so anyway, I met with the owner, a guy named Dave Close, and English guy, real funny. So anyway, left, and he's like, yeah, hey, let's do this. And I'll tell you this. So this was in 2009, early 2009.
Okay.
So the only rig count at the time was in East Texas and West Louisiana.
Okay.
I mean, there was some stuff working in West Texas and South Texas.
So Eagle Ford at this time really wasn't blowing again.
No, there was no. I mean, like the Eagle Ford's been there, but like the Eagle Ford, like we all know, was
11,
non-existent.
12, yeah.
Yeah, non-existent. And so there were a few rigs standing upright, but nothing really.
Okay.
And so anyway, so I go to work for him, making. If I told people now what I was making then, I mean, it was. I mean, it was nothing.
Okay.
And
no, I get that. I remember when I first started. I mean, I graduated A&M, then I got my master's, and first I got in the oil field. I mean, I was making like a little below 40K.
Yeah, I was making 33 grand a year.
Yeah, yeah.
And but I mean, it was a small startup, and I was happy to have it. I mean, I was gone all the time on a rig, and
that's the thing, though, man. You start chasing that. I mean, don't get me wrong. Of course, you want more. You always want more. You know what I mean when it comes to wages and all stuff. But at the same time, I mean, if you're happy and you're fine, kind of where you're at, and it's lower stress and not a lot of bullshit you're dealing. You don't have to make it the most because you can have as much fun and learn as much without making the most.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh yeah, and I was tickled pink to be there, and I moved to Tyler, Texas.
Okay.
And got my own little apartment, and that I was literally never at, and so we were very busy. But basically, what I was doing, so we had these little tools. They were what you call like a survey on connection tool. So a poor man's MWD tool, but I mean it was an MWD tool. Had some proprietary technology, really cool stuff, and we were using some of the same technology from that first tool that Dave had sold to NOV. And this was so like Brandon. I never know how to say his last name. Bizardi?
Oh, Bizarre? Yeah.
So he was at NOV at the same time, and this is when Pete Miller was there, and he was buying everything, and we all thought NOV stood for no other vendor.
Right.
They were buying everything. Well, so
I love that. There was NOV, no other vendor, and there was MI Swaco, Mr. I'm sorry we aren't coming outside. I remember I learned that offshore when I was over the Shakers. And I think someone wrote that in like the tally book. And the MI Swaco guy that was out there was like, who wrote this? And I was like, I don't know. He's like, this isn't true. I'm out here right now. I was like, hey, dude, first I've been Brian's a joke. Chill, man. God.
Well, so they had told me that like out in the field. And they were like, so how long before you go to work for NOV? And I was young, dude. I didn't know what NOV was.
Yeah.
And so I remember stepping out on the rig for the first time and like poking my head outside this old steel doghouse and just like looking, big Kelly rig. And I'm like,
didn't everything seem just like dangerous?
Oh, dude, I thought I was gonna die.
Yeah,
like every time I turned around,
it was loud. Equipment was grinding, metal against metal. You're like, I don't know. Tell me where the green zones are.
Yeah,
I feel like anywhere I go, I'm gonna be a disaster.
So this guy that trained me that they had working in the field is this huge dude, big bodybuilder. His name was Derek Ham, and he was Army Ranger.
Yeah.
And
is he still around? I feel like I've heard that name.
Oilfield Services, I think is what he runs out of.
I've heard that name before. Okay.
Cool dude. And so he's just like turbo Army Ranger. He was in Iraq and Afghanistan, and just no F's given.
Yeah.
And so like I'm poking my head out this doghouse, and he literally grabs me like a kitten and just kind of like throws me out on the rig floor, and it's like, hey, here you are, kid. And like looking back now, that is so perfect for how like oil and gas has been for my career. It's just head first, boom,
jump in,
let's go. Okay. And so anyway, and then shortly thereafter, some stuff went by, but I learned a lot real fast. But that was the downhole tool world, and then NOV had first rights of refusal, so they put us on some jobs in West Texas. So I started going to West Texas, and then they put me down We got a job with H&P 314.
Okay.
A guy named Robert Bertram was the company man down there for Anadarko and the Briscoe Catarina, drilling an exploratory well.
All right.
And some like first year engineers that we probably all know, Gavin Fluke,
Oh yeah.
Jonathan Floyd.
Oh yeah.
They were on the rig, kind of like overseeing.
Anadarko had such a good group of young engineers and great leadership. I remember back in the day,
Yeah.
it was the place to be.
Oh yeah,
It was the place.
great people.
And you can always tell that as a salesperson. Whenever you walk into like a customer's office, you know what I mean? You can always tell the type of culture with the people that work there. You know, you come to some offices, you're like, I don't feel like it's a real good
Yeah.
teamwork here. Then you go to others, like, man, this would be a great place to work. The company culture really does shine, and you can feel it. You know what I mean?
Oh,
when,
yeah.
when you go into buildings, and you go
Yeah.
into different break rooms, and you start meeting the teams of engineers and
So,
operators.
you know, it's funny that you talk about that, because one of the things, so later in my career, I ended up getting to do a bunch of work in Canada.
Okay.
And if you've never worked in Canada, it is, you know, we all joke like Canadians are the nicest people in the world, but they really are. They're very nice. They're very respectful.
Yeah.
So if
Isn't
you're
that
sitting,
annoying?
I mean,
I'm joking how respectful it is.
you know, sometimes you're like, dude, can you just like drop an F-bomb here and like tell me what in the hell's going on?
Yeah.
And then we can get on down the road. But then sometimes, you know, the really cool thing is from like, you know, here in Houston, there kind of got to be this mentality from like a lot of customers, especially I think some of the younger ones, where there was you're the hired help kind of type mentality.
Yes.
And so you work for me because you're a vendor.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the things in Canada is if they don't perform, the rigs and the money, the people, they leave. And where do they go? They go south to the U.S. to work because they can put the rigs to work, they can make more money, but and they have a really short drilling season too, right? So they can only basically drill most of the country when it freezes up.
Okay.
And so then you have spring breakup, so everything starts to thaw out. You want to go on a really cool rabbit hole, start looking on YouTube and Google for rigs in Canada post breakup. And you'll see like pictures of just the crown sticking out of the mud.
What?
To where, you know, like these rigs and their rig moving trucks look like, I mean, they're these giant monster
Really?
trucks. It's cool. Anyway, I digress. But
I'll go down that rabbit. That's a pretty cool rabbit hole to go down.
it's pretty cool. But the really cool thing is, you know, you come in, and if you're sitting at the table because you're there to represent a product line or a tool or a service, whatever the madness is, and you look, and there may be like a VP of drilling sitting across the table. If you wait your turn and respectfully step into the conversation and say, hey guys, you know, I think maybe this isn't the route to go. I think if we went this way instead, we'd be able to do these things. Everybody hears you out, explores the idea together, and then if everybody says, you know, yeah, this is probably a much better route, then you're going to go, you know, but you're truly a part of the team. You're not the guy that works for them.
Well, how much? Let me ask you a question about that, because that's a great segue. Not even a segue, just kind of a path to go down. A lot of times, you know, there's people that you want to work for.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And there's people that just kind of you feel that, oh, I'm just a vendor. It's beneficial to anybody, in my opinion. Now, how much of that you think is pushed down from like leadership? Like, oh, they learned that from their leaders, or it's one of those things that they're kind of get called on so much, where they kind of get oversaturated, where that feeling of, well, if Roy's not in here, I'll just get someone else in here. I mean, do you think it's leadership, or do you think it's just kind of a personal thing?
I mean, I think both, right? I mean, to some extent, leadership is responsible,
Right.
but I mean, ultimately, I mean, there's some bad human beings out there, right? And we're not all judged on you know, that guy or person, I guess.
Yeah.
But you know, ultimately, leadership's responsible for it, and if leadership's not facilitating the environment where you can be, or well, you know, like here's the deal: if leadership's coming down on people and saying, you know, why are you bringing this to the table? You're going to do it this way. This
Yeah.
is how we do it, and this is, you know, that tribal leadership type deal. You know, that's not good for anybody, because we are the industry. There's no other industry in this world that has pushed technology as far as it can go and brought new technology to the forefront of the industry quicker, and therefore propelled the industry. You know, look at the, you know, prime example, Eagleford wells. Eagleford wells used to take anywhere from like 12 to 18 days.
Okay.
If you can drill, you should be able to drill a standard Eagleford well in less than 6 days.
Right.
Like,
Yeah, it's
and
just
that's long.
yeah.
Really, I
Right.
mean, you should be TDing those wells in probably 4.5 days.
Right.
And if you look at some of the top ones in South Texas, I mean, they're doing that. But how did that happen? From new people bringing new technology, and then that was from a willingness on the operator side to adopt or try that new technology and push it forward. And without that, I mean, we go nowhere. So, I mean, if leadership isn't helping facilitate the environment to where people feel comfortable to try new things, like right now in today's market, post-COVID, here's what's happening, or I guess we're maybe still in COVID.
Yeah.
I'm being optimistic. There's a lot of scrutiny with the down market right now because we
Keep
basically
going.
have people are scared to try things, and so if that environment isn't allowed to exist, then people will have those mentalities of, well, you're the vendor.
Well, that's the thing. I think I think there's a lot of. I think it's directly reflection of leadership because there's a lot of places that you go in. There's always you hear like, oh, you get in front of that guy, it's tough, all that stuff. The next thing you know, the team of engineers below that person will kind of treat the vendor or the oilfield service person like they are just. I mean, it really. I think it's more of a direction or of leadership than it is. Yes, I mean, obviously there's bad people out there, but I just feel that leadership does set the pace and set the tone for how to deal with vendors and people that I love working with operators that view companies as business partners
Yeah,
versus just a vendor. So
all day
anyway,
long.
all day long. So
anyway, we get bought by NOV. The inevitable happens.
yeah,
Then shortly thereafter, of course, you buy a new product line. What do you want to do? Make it grow fast and make money off of it.
right.
So my boss at the time was still John Watwitz, and he said, "Hey, look, they want to grow in the Permian." This is 2011, early 2011, so like January 2011.
Okay.
And before it is what it is now, like it was right on the brink, right?
Right.
And rig count, like total U.S. rig count at the time, I think was like 1,800 rigs.
Ooh.
And so anyway, he says, "Look, I need you to go West Texas, do your thing, kick in doors. I need you to hire the guys, build a team, set up the shop,
Right.
the whole 9 yards." So word gets out, we got bought by NOV. One of our big customers in West Texas at the time, he says, "Hey, Roy, I'm not running you." I said, "What?" He said, "I don't do business with NOV."
Okay.
And I was like,
Hard stance.
first day out there, like that's my area now, and I lose like 4 rigs, boom.
Oh, that's great.
And I'm like, all right.
That's motivating.
So we started hiring guys like crazy. I built a team, set up the shop, set up everything, got vendors to do business with for inspection and everything. That was great. Had a ball doing that. We went from 0 rigs to we were running on average around 75 rigs a day.
Okay.
For us. We had a very niche tool, so we had to be basically anybody that had straight hole to kick off was our market, right? And we worked all over. It was great.
So did you enjoy your time at NOV?
Yeah, so my time at NOV was actually pretty awesome. There were times at NOV when I was there, I hated my life because ultimately, so right after I left West Texas, they said, "Hey, there's a lot of stuff in the background that happened, but basically I left West Texas and came to Houston as a sales guy, and I got put on this team in Houston to where like I was the youngest guy by 20, 30 years.
Okay.
Everybody else, the whole reason I was there is because one of them was retiring. But like all of the legends, like the names on conference calls that you heard,
Yeah.
like when they spoke up, everybody listened. Like those guys, that's the team I got put on.
Well, that's pretty good exposure.
It was great, except for the fact it's like working for your granddad. Nothing was ever good enough.
Yeah.
I would go close a deal that was pretty substantial, and they would be like, "Well, you should have done this. You didn't do this."
Nothing was. Yeah.
And I'm like, "Are you kidding? Like, no one else on the sales team has done this." And
I can see the positives and the positive things and the negative things from that. Number one, it's positive because you got these great legends in the industry, but the negative side of it is nothing you do is gonna be good enough.
no, yeah. So I actually got a
And
funny
any
story.
new thing you try is gonna be shot down.
Yeah, well, so they actually, one of the really things I've been really blessed for my entire career is somehow I've been able to work for a lot of people. There's been some real bad apples I've worked for along the way, but the positive thing is I've been allowed to work for some folks that really gave me my head and let me run.
Okay.
And but they allowed me to take Brene Brown's her deal is to be the guy in the arena, and I was always that guy, and I was always pushing the envelope. But when something didn't go right, or there was a teachable moment, if you will, I mean, they held my feet to the fire big time.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's consequences come from your actions.
I learned fast and I learned hard. And when I got to Houston, so I had all these old timers I was running with, and then I had a bunch of these new guys, some guys I really looked up to and still do. And I kind of got a lot of the new school Houston type. This is how you sell in Houston. And then I had that field mentality, and then I had that old school. And so I really was kind of blessed in the fact that I kind of got this perfect marriage of like, this is what oil and gas sales is in the majors. I mean, Houston's a major league, right?
Houston is probably the most difficult place, and in my opinion, I'm sure you have listeners from all over, whether it's Midland or whether it's
Right.
Denver, or wherever they're at. Like, oh man, I feel like Houston though is a Shark Tank. I mean,
Oh, it is.
For every one Roy or every one JP, there's 100 of us here. Versus, yeah,
It's tough.
It is tough.
One of the things, so I went to work for the MD Tacto group within NOV.
Yeah.
And one of the things, so essentially what they're handling all the data. So at the time, and still there's two main players on the data side, on the drilling side, and that's MD Tacto and Payson. And so they hold and control and sample all the data essentially,
Okay.
and aggregate all that data on a drilling location.
Okay.
And so that's where I kind of got my step into the data side and the tech side of oil and gas. And so what I realized though is to sell anything in oil and gas on the drilling side specifically, you essentially have to always think about how does the bit, and by that I mean like ROP. How does this impact your ROP and your overall performance?
Right.
And at the time, ROP was the name of the game. Now you're looking at cycle times, overall times, and so some places you may have reached peak ROP, and so now you're trying to shave other places, right? And so essentially that kind of, I didn't know it at the time, but that kind of formed my next several steps in my career. And so after NOV, and while I was at NOV, used to have, and I think they probably still do, but they had a huge training program.
Oh, yeah.
I actually took classes from Jonathan Rhodes.
Yeah.
But I took a ton of technical classes. So up in Conroe at the downhole facility, they used to teach these very in-depth technical schools. And so
you got a lot of good training with NOV.
I took everything I could.
And so what caused you to leave I guess NOV with all this training, all those resources?
Yeah. So I look, the downside to NOV was a couple of things. Everybody knows, like, the majors usually don't pay great.
Okay.
And then there's a ton of red tape and bureaucracy. And then, bad leadership is toxic. And there was a change in my immediate leadership, and I don't think any of the people that were on my team at that time are still there.
Well, it's also one of those things too. It seems like you, growing up in Austin, you have the entrepreneur spirit. So
Yeah.
working for a big outfit like that would be a great, I guess, footing. But as far as long-term, I guess, career path, it doesn't sound like it
Right.
fits your
It just wasn't for
your
me.
fuego de vida,
Yeah.
as we call it.
So I started on a small shop when I got into oil and gas, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Well, then shortly thereafter, I left. Somebody came to me, I won't say who, and said, "Hey, we're going to pay you a bunch of money to go to work for this company."
Okay.
I talked to my mentor about it, and he was like, "This is a terrible idea.
Okay.
You're going to hate it. It's not technical enough." And so he was 100% right.
You like the technical side of things.
Yeah, and I didn't know that actually at the time.
Okay.
And so, but I mean, that's totally where ultimately I like the technical. I mean, look, technical drilling is sexy.
Okay.
Everybody loves it. Everybody wants to be in it. Like, the prima donnas of the oil field are the directional drillers. We all joke about it. I drive an F-250. I was never a DD, but I have the DD truck. But and that's the sexy side. Why? Because they can make or break a well. If a DD, like, there was an instance not long ago in West Texas where a DD planted an entire lateral 1,200 foot off plan. Like, that's a huge deal.
Oh.
And so anyway, but I kind of got into that niche of the data and the performance and the drilling, and so I didn't realize it. And then And a lot of people I really looked up to at the time started coming to me, and they would ask stuff and, hey, what about this data? And can you see this there? And, stuff like that. And it really, I'm a pretty arrogant, egotistical, cocky, guy.
Very humble, it sounds like.
But I can be very humble, and I've really gotten good over the years of looking back and saying, like, I don't know the answer to this. But I'm like, you want to tell me about this? And one of the big things too is from a sales side, I've sat across the table from some of my customers and said, look, why are you doing this? Like, help me understand why you went this route. And that is so powerful because one, like, people are always more than happy to tell you, essentially how smart they are and what they know.
Right.
But what that does from a sales perspective is now you know why they chose that, why they went that direction, and now you can take that and stick that in your toolbox and go back at it with a different angle. Or when you go to the next guy and you're trying to push, whatever product and service you are.
Understand the problems.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that's extremely important. I think that's such a great move to do because number one, you're understanding what's driving their reasoning, their decision making. And number two, you're not making assumptions like, oh, well, Roy went with whatever company just because, they would, I saw them at lunch together. I saw them go to a baseball game together, whatever it is.
Right.
It kind of squashes the assumption
Right.
side of things and gives you some knowledge on what drives decision making on that side of the desk.
That's right. And so anyway, so I went to work for this other company, non-technical whatsoever, and it didn't work out. And so I was sitting at the house looking for another job, and a buddy of mine actually tagged me in something on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And he's like, dude, this is right up your alley. So I did some research, looked at it, and so the company was a company maybe you heard of, Corva.
Oh, yeah, Corvinats.
So
yeah, I just had William Standiford on here, and I think his daughter is a Corvinat, I believe. Yeah, I feel like that's right. Different last name.
Okay.
Yes.
So I went to work for Corva in late 17.
This was such a cool company.
And I was the 7th person in the door.
Okay.
And we were working when I got there for one customer. And they had, I think, 2 rigs working at the time.
Okay.
In West Texas. And they said, hey, look, same thing again. We want to grow as hard and fast as we can. So I put together a strategy. Said this is how we're going to run. This is what we're going to do, and presented it to them. And they said, "Yeah, this works. We just want to meet every whatever it was week or other week, every other week to kind of go over where we are."
Yeah. Well, yeah. Let's just get like market customer.
Right.
So you went from a non-technical sales role to a new startup technology, data software focused company.
Yeah. So with a performance drilling focus.
So very night and day differences when it comes to selling and
think Google meets the Rotary table.
Okay.
I
cool.
mean, that's what it was. And that's how I pitched it everywhere we went. And so we grew. So I hit the ground running, and I was there for a while. I had an engineer, and then he left. And then I was the sales guy with no engineer trying to sell a pretty technical product, which I could do a lot of, but really and truly, I needed somebody.
It's like that meme I posted this today on LinkedIn.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100% spot on. Right. And so I ended up needing an engineer, and so I called actually an old customer of mine, Andrea Arduin. Okay. And she hates it when I tell people this, but I said, hey, come to work on the service side. And she said, no, I'm an operator.
Yeah.
And I was like, look, I know. I need an engineer like bad. And she's like, well, what if I go to work for an operator? I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. I need an engineer right now. Like, you need something to do. I need help. Let's do this. I said, I will promise you will have more fun doing this than you've ever had at work. And I think if you asked her now, she would say that was spot on.
I think if you hear it, you'll have more fun now than you've ever had at work before. I mean, that's something that's got to prick your ears up a little bit so you listen to it. I mean, at least explore what that means.
When I've interviewed with people, they say, well, what are you looking for in a career or a job or whatever in this role? And I'm like, look, I want to have fun.
Yeah.
If I can't have fun doing this, I'm not interested in doing it at all. And people kind of look at you weird.
It's like, but I agree with that though. If I have an employee who's having fun and that means they're going to do their job with so much more motivation, so
Oh
much more
yeah,
drive, and so much more, I guess, innovation when it
that's
comes
right.
to solving problems.
So we assembled this A team at Corva, and it was epic. And Ryan Dawson, the CEO over there, he's literally a
Did
visionary.
you come up with Corvinauts or did he?
That was his deal.
Okay.
So
That's what they called themselves at Corvinauts. I dig
Corvinauts.
that.
And so I came up with the killing it. I was hashtag killing it all the time. I mean, I didn't come up with killing it. I mean,
Yes,
who
yeah, but
knows? But
you brought it into the workforce.
yeah, so at Corva, we have a neon sign that says killing it, or they do.
Very Instagram worthy.
I'm not there anymore. Yeah, very cool. And so anyway, built up this huge team. In the first year at Corva, we grew by 4,000%. A little over 4,000 actually, but it was insane. So we went from one customer, two rigs in West Texas to we were like 36 different operators in 4 countries, like 260 something rigs.
Okay.
And so I remember one time we presented to Conoco and they were like, oh yeah. But they were using a different shop here in the States. And so one of the Canadian guys was down and he was like, I have a 14 well pad coming up to you. What do you think? It's like, yeah, sounds great. He's like, is it in metric? And I was like,
Yes.
And I said, when does this pad start? He said, in 3 weeks. I said, we'll have the entire system available in metric in 2 weeks. And so I come back to the office and Ryan Dawson's like, oh, what? And then,
You gotta rebuild. Yeah.
But what's funny is in Canada, they use like a hybrid. They use both. So like some of the stuff will be in meters. Some of it will be in kilopascals, and then some of it will be in standard measurements. So
I'm a
like,
huge kilopascal type of guy.
Yeah.
That's just me, though. Call me new school.
so anyway, it was a great time, man. We built an amazing team. We really accomplished some cool stuff. I was afforded, but to kind of bring it back to point, one of the things I was really afforded to do there was really get into both the sales and the marketing side.
Okay. So you had a little. So you got sales down. You've been doing sales your career. This is the first time you were actually exposed to the marketing side. And what was the marketing in your opinion? Because
So
marketing it's so different. You know what I mean? I feel it's so broad. But I guess what did you actually start your marketing?
So my marketing exposure had been from this huge corporate conglomerate of NOV, right? So I got to work with like Stephen Forster
Yes.
and a bunch of other people, Carrie Smith and Melissa and that team over
Yeah.
there. So like I knew like, okay, here's what we do, here's how we do things. But like I'm sure you can imagine, NOV has a huge marketing
yeah.
budget, right? And so here we are, the small shop, we're very small. And one of the little side note, one of the most rewarding things while I was at Corva was I was out there just kicking indoors and blowing and going, and I was gone really. I mean, I would be gone 4 to 5 weeks a month,
Okay.
pretty much all the time, and I was running and gunning, and
So your work schedule was so much they would even add a weekend on a month. So
I mean, if there was,
5 weeks.
yeah, sometimes on that fifth Sunday, like I was gone, and sometimes it was flying out on Sunday to be able to make an appointment, and then I remember one time I was in Oklahoma, and a customer I'd been trying to nail down for a while in Denver finally replied to an email and said, "Hey, I can meet you at 9 in the morning."
Yeah.
And I had meetings up until I had my last meeting in Oklahoma that day was at 3. I caught a 6 o'clock into Denver, got into Denver. I had to fly to like Dallas and then all this stuff. And when I got into Denver at like 11, take the train to downtown and then Uber over to a hotel, have the meeting, and then run down 16th. You made the meeting and then run down 16th and drop some other stuff off. And then a guy in Midland calls who, same thing. Hey, tomorrow afternoon, if you can be here at 2. And I'm like, geez. So what do? Rebook a flight. Southwest and me are like, I mean, we're homies. And so I flew back into Midland, but I made it happen, right? So I was gone all the time. But the really cool thing is every time I'd come back to the Corva office, so they have this huge real-time center. It literally is nicer than what NASA has. I don't know when the last time you went to NASA, but like
It's been a while.
they have, I mean, it's insane. I mean, these guys are monitoring ERD wells all over the country and drilling rigs in South Texas. I mean,
Data
everything.
boards everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing.
Right.
And so, but the cool thing was that real-time center kept growing.
Okay.
And so every time I'd come back, there'd be a few more and a few more and a few more. And so that was all a result of like, hey, I picked up more work, so now we need more people. And what's really cool is we were going out and hiring these people that had been at some of the majors and had been laid off, but they were just, I mean, top hands.
Yeah.
I mean, just amazing people. And At one point in time, I remember telling my wife, I said, I've never felt like I belonged anywhere more than I do right now.
Going back to the people.
And it was all, and what was really cool was the camaraderie level at that company when I was there, and we had built this team, and that camaraderie level, I mean, there were times when, like me and management didn't see eye to eye, or even like me and some of my engineering team, but like we would literally have meetings where we would be dropping F-bombs at each other, and then we'd go have a beer.
Yeah.
And
Well, I mean, you showed me a video on there, and pretty much everyone, what they say there is like, it's the people, it's the people, it's the people, it's the people. But I kind of want to go back to your point when you got involved in
yeah,
marketing.
sorry.
When you
So,
started marketing. So tell me about that, kind of what you experienced and kind of, I guess, your strategy with that.
So one of the cool things was, again, coming from, one of these big companies, I was like, how are we going to compete with, we can't compete with the NOVs, the Schlumbergers,
Right.
the, whoever, pick one.
Right.
Scout, what even, some smaller of the
Right.
bigger. And so I started trying to think, all right, so we kind of found this term called guerrilla marketing, if you will, right? And how are we going to take and adapt from some of these other industries, especially like on the social fronts? And so we started heavy into LinkedIn, heavy into select breakfast runs. I would still do breakfast runs, and I would, even when I couldn't do breakfast runs, I found ways to do breakfast runs in other markets. And so, but
Which is smart. I mean, that's being in 3 places at one time.
yeah, and so our main markets then at the time that I had identified were Houston, Midland, OKC, and Denver.
Okay.
And so we were going to target some very specific client base. And then, so how are we going to be? I was one guy at the time, I was one sales guy, and we had other engineering support, but how are we going to maintain presence in 4 different geographical
Right.
markets? And so, and then ultimately we were going to run some other parallel strategies that basically, like, if these things happened, like we were going to have our lines in the
Right.
water in some other places, then we would go into other spots.
So trial and error, pretty much.
And so we basically, what I started doing, well, like, so I remember one day I was at the old Encana, now Ventive, break room. And, of course, back in the day, you'd go in there and there would be, I mean, it would look like that scene from Hook, where the table, just like far as you can see, is food and their break room. And so, but then
This
after,
is after he used imagination.
yeah, you're right.
Got you.
But, before,
Yeah.
so then they have a basket on that bar, though, and that basket is full of probably
yeah.
I don't know, 1,000 business cards.
This is the business card graveyard.
So I started doing some market intel and going through to see who else is on my stomping grounds. And then I start finding, I got like, by the time I finished counting, I had like 27 of my own cards in there. I'm like, good God, like this is getting nowhere.
And not one call.
And yeah, not a single call, Tyler. I'm kidding. So anyway, what I did is I went back and I got with, we had this UI guy that was working on a bunch of the Corva stuff. And so I said, hey, I need you to throw me together a little graphic. And I had 5x7, essentially like business cards made.
Yeah.
So what they were was, on one side they had some really cool shots of some of our stuff from Corva. And then on the other side it just had our logo, said Roye Strawn, and my phone number and email.
That's it.
But I mean, it was a 5x7 postcard. So I started leaving those all over.
Oh yeah. No, I mean that
And-
works. I mean it's like getting Christmas cards. And there's that one family that
Yeah.
has a Christmas card that's
And
like
you
one
can't-
and a half times. You're like, what are you doing with this?
Yeah. Well, so my big thing too was it won't fit in that stupid basket.
Yeah.
And so I was like, are these things really working? And then finally, all of a sudden, in the same week, I get texts from like 4 different guys that I knew, other sales guys. And they're like, dude, where have you not been?
Yeah.
And I was like, boom,
That's it.
I'm
Yeah,
there.
right.
And so then, the next thing we started doing was
Look, I'm sorry, go on.
going.
No. You're going with the next thing you were about to do? Because
Well,
I
yeah.
kind of want to tie into kind of what you're doing today on today's
Yeah,
market,
so-
because it seems like this kind of segues into it.
So I learned a lot there, right? Some of the stuff like at clay shoots. Clay shoots are expensive.
Yeah, they are.
And I maybe some of our customers don't realize that, but like by the time it's all said and done, for you to put in a 4 or 5 man team into a clay shoot like OHH or AADE, which OHH, hands down, if you're doing an event during or post COVID and you have limited marketing or entertainment dollars,
OHH.
give it all to OHH.
Yeah.
Go to those events. They're the best events, best people, and
Such a
ultimately
great cause, too.
I mean,
Yeah.
anyway. So none of the other organizations give back. I mean, they give some scholarships here and there, but
You really don't see it.
you don't see anybody else reaching down with their hand and helping pull up the rest of the industry.
And then that being said, they still need our support. They
Yeah,
still
they
need
do.
all that stuff. But at the same time, OHH, I mean, that's something that you can actually, put your hands on
That's
and
right.
feel the impact of kind of
Yep.
your involvement there. Yeah.
So anyway, we started doing stuff like, so like one of those clay shoots, if I'm going to put in a full team, that's 1,500 to
Right.
$2,000 by the time it's all said and done. And so, but there's tons of other sponsorship opportunities too. So like you just want to you want to go cook at one of those events. Usually it's $200 to $300, for the sponsorship. They put your name everywhere, and then you get to go set up and you can do basically whatever you want there. So like,
It's like a social sponsorship.
yeah, so we ordered all kinds of flags and banners, and like we would have piles and piles of swag. And we started cooking like tacos and, just being
Right.
there. And I would be like, so I'd walk through the office like the week of, and I'd be like, hey guys, I'm going to need you on Friday at Westside. And they're like, oh, well, I got this meeting. I'm like, I don't care. I need you there. Wear some jeans and a polo. I don't care. Whatever.
Yeah.
Bring a shotgun if you got it. I might need another shooter. And so we would just have a bunch of cool people there hanging out, being cool. And like, we started trying to do that all over. So like, I would call some of my colleagues in like Oklahoma and say, hey, what are the heavy hitter events that you go to in Oklahoma? And he'd be like, oh, these two, like you have to be at these two. Boom. I would somehow, so the Oilman's, the golf tournament, there's a huge waiting list actually to get in there and to sponsor and play.
Right.
So, but a friend of mine was like, hey, just come to I think they call it the social night. And so it's just basically like a huge happy hour, like the
Right.
night before or whatever. And so we had these awesome Corva coolers made, Yetis made. And so I donated one. And so my buddy was the one running the door prizes. So he gives us this huge plug and like this awesome cooler we had. And then we went there just wearing Corva shirts, and it was pretty legit. And but I mean, we just started focusing on things like that, like what can we do, where can we? And one thing too that happened is the GM at Corva told me we had a show come up, and she's like, hey, I said, hey, let's get a 10 by 10 booth here. And she said that 10 by 10 booth is probably going to cost us somewhere between
Right.
20 and 30 grand by the time it's all said and done. And I said, oof. And she said, I will go to this show, or I'll give you that, say, 20 grand to spend on hunting or fishing or anything else other than this trade show. And I was like, okay, see you, trade show.
Yeah.
And I went to, but I mean, that really helped me. And then with the guidance from Ryan Dawson, CEO over there, he's very, I guess very artsy, very marketing oriented.
Right.
And so he has a bunch of contacts on the software side that really helped kind of propel us into some of these like videos and things, right? And so,
and they all look great. They all look unbelievable. I've seen them all. I kind of want to carry you on from your time at Corva to kind of where you're at now and kind of what you're doing, because I feel we spend a lot of time at Corva, but what you're doing right now, you're crushing it, in my opinion.
well, thank you.
You're killing it.
So so one of the things I've always done is, so my mom worked for several different software companies in Austin.
Okay.
And she was in like a sales support role for several of them, all through like the big .com boom.
Okay.
And so one of the really cool things for me is she would always send me whatever their sales leadership was providing to their team. So as far as like books or technical learning
Right.
or sales stuff, or like the movie list, I don't know. So I actually screenshot it today. But so there's always the sales movies,
Oh,
right?
is that the post that someone made with was like Glenn Ross?
Yeah, Glenn Ross, Boiler Room, Wolf of Wall
And
Street.
then Alex Bryant mentioned another one, 1968 movie. I forget what it was.
Dude, but so like here's the deal, like those movies are terrible.
Right. Glenn Ross. Is
They're
pretty
good
damn
movies.
good.
They're good movies, right? Like Coffee's for Closers, always a staple. But ultimately, like, I don't want to be that sales guy.
No, that's a very 70s, 80s way
Yeah.
to sell. Yeah, close the deal no matter what.
Yeah, like I hate that.
That's not
Like-
that's not our industry though. I think
Yeah.
for some industries you can be that
Exactly.
way. Maybe not so much anymore, but for our industry it's not like that.
No.
Our industry is very relationship based, very knowledgeable based, and very solution providing.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. And so what I say all that because what I kind of grabbed onto early was oil and gas is so unique, but like what can we learn from other industries and other tactics and things that other people are deploying to how do we tweak those a little bit
Okay.
maybe to deploy into oil and gas?
Okay.
And so um, there is that shift change that everybody's been talking about for like 10, 12 years,
Hasn't
whatever.
happened.
I mean,
It's happening right now, I feel like.
it's happening, but at the same time, like, some of that we still have to adhere to the old school ways of doing things. But I think as a salesperson, if you're looking at, what can I do? How do I run my business? There's a lot of key things. And so I think ultimately you have to put yourself in that entrepreneurial spirit and say, this is my business. I own it. Yeah, I work for, whoever, but this is mine. And I'm going to drive this, and this is my brand and my reputation, and this is how I'm going to do it. So I've done some things recently, like I have some really really awesome real estate agents in Pearland.
Okay.
Some folks that I know. One of them I work out with, and then the other one, she's a neighbor and a friend, and her name's Corey Fleming. And then another one named Abby Robinson. So Abby does this thing, and their social game is on point.
Okay.
So Tinley Villa, also former petroleum engineer, Metcalf actually brought her up. So I know her as well. She's actually from Marble Falls. So she actually got out of oil and gas and went to real estate.
So what are they doing? What are they
So
doing
what
now?
they're doing is, if you look at it, they're staying in front of their customers on the social platforms.
Okay.
They're posting stats, and not necessarily stats about, hey, look how great I am, but like, here's what's going on in our markets, in our world right now. Here's some things that might help you and empower you as a customer.
Yeah. At least have some sort of basis to start having that conversation. Like, is it a good time to buy? Is it a good time to sell? Is it time to refinance?
Right.
Well, this is the yeah.
Exactly. So Abby actually did a thing here in Pearland, and she would post on her Instagram story her Starbucks barcode,
Okay.
and buy people, a coffee. Hey, go grab a coffee on me. And she would, just stack some cash on there, and then when it was gone, right?
Okay.
And so I was like, man, that's great.
Yeah.
Because what did we always used to do with customers? We'd grab a coffee here, grab a coffee there, take coffee, whatever. And so, but with COVID, it's a little difficult right now. So we use a CRM, a customer relationship management tool. We use HubSpot, not advocating for HubSpot, but we use something. But essentially what we use it for is like automation of our emails at SitePro.
Okay.
And so we have a great marketing person. Her name's Erica Anderson. And
So
so
what do we do with the coffee then?
so I call Erica and I say, hey, I want to do this coffee deal, and I want to send an email to all of my customers and say, hey, we did two things. I included the barcode and said, look, I know things are crazy right now. I'd love to have a coffee with you, but if you're not comfortable having a coffee yet in person, here's my barcode. Go grab a coffee on me.
Dude, I saw that and I just thought that was just such a great new, innovative, respectful way. It's kind of one of those things. Hey, look, I'm not going to be knocking on your door to get in your office, especially a time like this. That being
Right.
said, get yourself a coffee, your time. I don't care how you do it, just
That's right.
put it on
And
here.
it works at any Starbucks worldwide.
Stuff like that's such a great idea.
But the other thing I did too is I included a Calendly link. So if you did want to have coffee with me, here's my calendar. Go book a time that works for you.
So what kind of feedback did you get from that? The reception?
So that's actually a great segue too. I know you handle those, but
no, babe. This is your show right now.
Hey.
You handle it. You
So
segue us through.
a couple things. One, to answer your question, that was the highest open rate at SitePro we've had on any email so far, which was like 47% open. So when you do these large emails like that, like a lot of people are like 47%, like that's huge.
Yeah.
And so the one thing I will tell a lot of folks is, if you ever can, always ask first. Take a step around behind your client's desk and look at their inbox. And then ask yourself how effective an email is to be sent. They're not.
You know what? I agree with that. Also, I was also I wrote down something when you were talking about, I think you were talking about like the new way to market, all that stuff. And one thing that that I would say also to that is, what would you like to see? If you're that customer with that email, what
Right.
email do you want to see? If you're a customer or whoever that you're trying to get from, and you're scrolling, what's really going to have them stop scrolling and actually look and engage with whether it's your online presence on your post or whatever that is.
That's right.
That's a great point, though.
One of the other big things though is first and foremost, there's probably a lot of sales leadership out there that's going to roll their eyes at me when I say this, but I hate CRMs.
Oh yeah.
Now,
well, this is why, because it's not okay. You go first, and I'll give my shit.
So CRMs are awful because of a couple of reasons. Typically, unfortunately, I'm going to say this too. There's a lot of very poor leadership out there, and the great ones are few and far between. And typically, what I've seen happen with CRMs is that you wind up being a micromanaging tool.
Yes.
And well, you only sent 10 emails this week. Who gives a crap? How many texts did you send? How many phone calls did you make? And then how many social media posts did you make? Did you have any chats on LinkedIn? I've got a meeting tomorrow that was set up that was 100% on LinkedIn. Never met the guy before in my life. All on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But what you do need, and I'm a huge advocate of this, is data. What's working? When is it working? And how is it working? And so, a couple of things there is there's a ton of different things you can do to track that, but you as an individual need to be tracking what's effective. And for emails can be effective. But if you look at your email stats, and there's a bunch of research you can actually do on Google too, if you want to go read, but there's certain times a day that emails get much higher open rates.
Yeah.
And then there's certain times that, like, if you send in an email after 9 o'clock on a Friday, you can pretty much forget it. It's going into la la land. Especially if you're sending it to someone in the operational side of the upstream.
Because I was going to say, unless you send it to us, we're going to answer that at 9:01.
That's right.
That's the type of salespeople we are.
That's right.
Okay, that's right.
Even though we'll be on, the 6th hole by then.
But that's a good point, though. I mean, the CRM. You're right, though. Number one, managers use it to micromanage. And when that happens, then you start having fluff, and you kind of lose certain topics and points just because all the bullshit gets thrown in there. Oh, I met with Roy. We discussed this. First off, every time I meet with a customer, I'm not talking work because they know what I do. They know what you do. And
that's right.
If you keep on constantly branding, it's like I always equate it as every time you go by someone's office, you're asking for, hey, can you loan me $20? Can you loan me $20? Can you loan me $20? Eventually, they're not going to want to see you.
No.
So when people start throwing in like bullshit in the CRM and stuff that's just not truthful because they feel they have to justify their job, it just takes away look, it's a great tool if used properly, and it's, in my opinion, it's rarely used properly.
Yeah. So, the other hard thing too is, again, oil and gas is so unique. None of these CRMs were built with the oil and gas industry in mind. And so because, we're very relationship driven, but we're also very technical. And so some of these sales cycles on different products and services are so unique that it doesn't work out, right? And so now, and the other thing is, I work for a fantastic guy now. His name's David Bateman. He's the CEO, owner, founder of SitePro.
Right.
Really cool guy. But he actually told us this story. We had this huge sales meeting of basically like, let's all get together. What's working, what's not, air it out. And so one of the big things is, I kind of set my sights on our CRM, and everybody was like, well, there's some good things. And David was like, to hell there is. He said, hell, we had an investor meeting we went to present to, and there was so much fake garbage in there because people were worried. And so they're just putting all this fluff in there. And they said they had like $40 million worth of deals coming through.
Yeah.
And none of it was real.
Yeah.
And so, it's the same thing. And like,
but good for him to look at it that way, because some people are like, well, no, it's still but good for him to actually see what it is.
Right.
But yeah, it's not effective.
And again, there are some great tools for it. Yeah. And like personally, me, I'm a very visual person, so like I'll use it, and I'll use it to go see like when's the last time I touched this guy. That sounds awful. When's the last time I reached out to this client?
In a socially distant, respectable. Yeah.
Yeah. So. But that's the thing. And then the other thing is, I'll have a whiteboard, and sometimes I just need to pull out an expo marker and get on that whiteboard and map some stuff out, and then sit there and, stroke the beard and
ponder
and
just ponder. Look,
yeah.
Tell me about kind of your way, because what you've done recently, besides the coffee thing, I mean, you have started kind of doing these. You're putting yourself out there more lately, I feel like, and this is just me kind of knowing you recently, actually. But what I've seen from you is you're kind of putting yourself out there more, not just kind of the product, not SitePro or anything like that, but you're putting Roye out there. You're putting yourself out there, which I think is great. I mean, because what that does I feel like I know you. Whether I've never met you before or anything like that, I'm like, okay, well, I know I feel like I know this guy a little bit better, and I feel more comfortable engaging with him or taking a meeting with him.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. So I've been at the beginning of COVID, when I was at Corva, I actually wanted to start a podcast, and there was all this talk about how much work it is, and do you have time, and what are you going to talk about, and I'm one of those guys. I shoot from the hip a lot, but I'm also not afraid to fall back and be like, hey, this isn't working. We need to try something different.
Right.
But keep with forward progress in mind, not just, hey, we're going to abandon this altogether. But I'm not afraid to say, hey, I screwed up. This was a bad call. We need to do something different. So I finally, at the start of COVID, I was like, oh yeah, we're going to do this. So I got a camera, got it all set up and everything. And then to be real brutally honest here,
That's what this is all about.
your podcast hit, and I was like, oh man. And then somebody else's hit, and I was like, oh dang, all right, well, I'm behind the ball now. And
Behind the ball, there's always room for more podcasts out there.
so anyway, I kind of lost a little bit of motivation, and then Jacob Corley over at Digital Wildcatters actually reached out to me a couple weeks ago and said, dude, why are you not vlogging? And I was like, I don't know. And so like a lot of my customers know me on my socials on, Facebook and Insta and
for
Snap.
some of those elder generation, you go what vlogging is.
Yeah, so like
Real
basically
briefly.
building out video content to where I'm essentially walking through various activities.
Yeah, it's kind of a snapshot into kind of what an everyday or what a day
What a moment in
life
time
of-
with Roy is.
Exactly.
Don't worry, there'll be no beard trimming on camera, or I'm not going to show you my avocado toast. But
I don't know what that means, but I dig that.
yeah, but, hey, so
I don't know what that means. If that's code for anything, I don't know.
So the thing is like, again, I've known a lot of my customers. A lot of my customers I'm at different levels with, right, as far as relationship, and so some of them, we're friends on Facebook or connected on Instagram and
Right.
LinkedIn, and I try and keep most of it somewhat professional, but the Snapchat stuff is also just another avenue to stay in touch with some of my clients, right? And so some of them are like, dude, like I would go back in and see them like in Denver or something. They're like, dude, what in the world happened the other day south of Lubbock, and stuff like that. And it's just
But that's a springboard to having a
Right,
conversation.
right.
Yeah.
And
Versus
so-
how's business.
yeah. And listen, it's some of the content I've put out recently is not great. But it's some of it's I'm learning a lot as we go. There's a lot of great people that have influenced it so far. One of the big things is I really enjoy like the public speaking, the presenting. I was asked to speak at like Energy Tech Night that the Digital Wildcatters were doing a couple years ago before all this for Corva. When I was at NOV, anything that came up like that, I was like, dude, I'll do it. Come on. And, so stuff like that I really, really enjoyed. I still do. I don't get to do it as much now. But I'll be the front man for anything. And like I had somebody one time ask me if I would be the MC for an event that they were having. I was like,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm down, but am I that guy? And they said, oh yeah, definitely. And so I just, it's been a lot of fun, but the thing is too, is there's so many people out there. So I reached out to a couple guys that have recently transitioned into sales last week and asked them, I said, hey, what are some of the biggest questions you have right now as far as sales? And there's a lot of really good podcasts out there right now. Obviously, people need to be listening around the Rotary if they're not already.
Obviously.
But there's some really good content out there. There's great technical content. There's great like marketing movement
Yeah.
podcasts, and by that I mean let me rephrase that, industry movement podcasts. But no one focuses or thinks about the salesperson, and so salespeople right now, a lot of them are lost. So how do you, what do you do? How do you do that? And then heaven forbid,
because every tool and trick that we've had for the past 40, 50 years is out the window.
yeah, it's completely new. There's a recruiter that posted the other day on LinkedIn, Jeremy Jensen, I think, about how he had to meet a guy at a Starbucks, and they were going to have a coffee on the patio,
It was closed.
and he ended up having to hop in the guy's car and go through the drive-through, and
He's like most of the time those deals would be made around a boardroom table.
Yeah.
But here we are sitting in his Subaru having a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
But the things of what you're doing, I mean, you say, look, it's not that great. What I'm putting out there is not great. Blah 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 blah. At the same time, you're still doing it, and that's the thing. I mean, I would advise people out there who are potentially talking about maybe putting themselves out there more or starting something. Just do it, and
absolutely
put it out there. Keep pushing, and you're gonna find what works. You're gonna find that groove, and you're gonna find out what works for you. And that's when you kind of go forward. Don't be worried about putting out the best quality content, everything banger, the first thing out.
right.
Yeah.
You know, I think ultimately there's a few staples I try and always think of. One, be genuine. Two, be professional, and that one has an asterisk next to it, I think, because
I'm very hard asterisk. I'm big asterisk on that because you can be
yeah.
professional but still have fun.
Yes, and so it doesn't need to be rigid all the time. We goof around a lot, and so. But the other thing is, I've had a lot of folks reach out recently and say, hey, I'm trying to find a job.
Yeah.
Like, can you help me? I'm like, yeah, I'll help you till the cows come home. What do you need? But the first thing I ask them is, how active are you on LinkedIn? And then they'll say, I don't know, I logged in last week. And I'm like, mm-mm.
So let me ask you a question. So, I mean, I kind of feel like that's kind of an exclusion. I mean, lack of a better word. I mean, for people that are sitting there that are listening to this, that aren't active on LinkedIn, that aren't like this, to you, that doesn't demonstrate if they're a good professional employee or not. But what does that reflect to you if they're not active on LinkedIn? What does that tell you?
If I'm looking at it, I'm going to say, hey, look, I don't know jack about this person.
Right.
What are they like? Like, are they great technically at what they do? Probably. I'm going to assume so. But realistically, how are they going to assimilate with a team if I'm trying to bring them in? And then the other thing is, what is this person like? As an individual being, what are they like?
Yeah.
But if they're not active on LinkedIn, LinkedIn has its faults for sure.
Oh no, absolutely.
But how are they staying up to date with their industry or other industries that could have impact on theirs, or what's happening, what the movement is?
So to you, and I agree with this too, to a certain extent. I'm not sure if you're saying this or not, but to you, it reflects effort. Look,
Sure.
You're actively trying to get a job. I get that, and I wish you the best. That being said, what I am seeing in my realm, in my sphere of influence is if you have a strong online LinkedIn presence where you're actively involved, engaging, reaching out, networking, all stuff, that tells me, number one, I know you a little bit better, just because I'm seeing your online personality, which is kind of a reflection of your real personality. And number two, I'm seeing effort. Look, this is a new day, new era, new way to network, new way to get coffees with people. Are you doing that? So it's not a question of like, hey, look, if you're not on LinkedIn, you're screwed. But to you, it's one of those things where it's like, and I agree with this, either whether you're saying this or not, whether I'm saying this, it's one of those things like, how much effort are you really putting out there to network and all this stuff? Or are you just saying, hey, look, I'm looking for a job, find me a job?
Right. Yeah, I mean, well, that's the other thing, right? So when I used to interview people, I would always ask, what do you do outside of work?
Yeah.
And people are like, why do you ask that? And I'm like, well, what is this person doing? If you're not here doing what your, work hours call you to do, what are you doing? And people will say, like if I was looking for what I didn't want to hear was, oh, I go home and watch Netflix, or, I go home and play with my cat. It's like, What I wanted was.
I have 2 cats.
Yeah, I bet you do. Do you really?
I do, thank you.
Yeah,
my daughter's kitty cat queen, so we gotta have cats.
Okay, yeah, but you have a daughter, like that's a little different.
You gotta have,
Well, yeah, but see, like in that conversation, prime example is
you get to know me more. Why do you have
right.
cats? Well, this is why.
Exactly. And so, but what I was ultimately looking for is I wanted someone that, like, when work is quote unquote over, which it never is in oil and gas, you go home and put in something else, like, oh, I work out, or oh, I'm a duck hunter, so I'm gonna go home, I'm gonna pack all this stuff, and in the morning I'm gonna get up and do all this work to go shoot 6 birds.
Yeah.
And then when I'm done with that, I'm gonna come back to the office and kill it again.
Well, Dina Dabowski had a great point when she was on. It's one of those things with activity being low, people aren't getting out. She had a great question. Her question was, "What have you done in
Yeah,
COVID? What have you done?" I'm not saying that you have to like I started a company, I sold. No, I'm not saying anything like that. But like, what have you done to
yeah,
improve on yourself? Whether it's the after work question that you had during the interview, but also hers is like, "Hey, look, what have you done during this break,
that's right.
this time
And like
off?"
I've seen, a ton of people have gotten their, excuse me, a lot of people have gotten their project management certificates, or people have gone back and re-enrolled in their getting their masters
Yeah.
or technical whatever. A lot of people have gotten their real estate license for side
And
hustles.
people have, and I think that's great. I mean, you're seeing a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, I built I'm sure you've seen it, an awesome
Dude,
office.
your office is. If anyone wants to see his office, connect with Roye Strawn on LinkedIn. It's unbelievable. It's a gorgeous office with the around the Rotary mascot Jude.
Jude's there on his Orvis dog bed. Got a lot of mounts in there. Got me a sweet fridge, by the way. If you want stickers on the fridge, I'll hit me up and we'll connect on the sticker game.
I
Um,
dig that.
but yeah, I mean, all kinds of stuff. I learned how to do a lot of stuff. I started a lot of the tracking, and so a lot of times during early COVID, like in the thick of it, I would not start work until, I mean, there are obviously times when this wasn't the case, but I wouldn't really start diving into work till lunch or later.
Right.
And
But the schedules are shifted.
but yeah, and I had stats to back it up, and so I did stuff like that when I was at. I mean, anyways, so one of the cool things is you need to market yourself and brand yourself. So we all work for a different company, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But what is JP Warren's brand? What is Roye Strawn's brand? And if you don't have a brand personally, there's a lot. This spot that I'm in at SitePro, prime example, right? Oh, a few years ago, I was with Ryan Dawson after a meeting in Austin while I was working at Corba, and went downstairs at the JW Marriott and had a couple beers with the guys from at the time Cottonwood Ventures, now Montrose Lane. And Ryan and Jeremy over there, great dudes. Well, what ended up happening was some time goes by, I leave Corva and went to work at Drill Foreman's. Well, so they call me during COVID and they said, "Hey, why'd you get out of tech?" And I was like, "Well, some backstory there,
Right.
but basically I didn't." And they said, "Well, do you want to go back into tech?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely. That's kind of my niche. I mean, And they said, "Well, look, long story short, we've seen what you can do, and we'd love to have you involved in our portfolio." And I was like, "Are you serious?" And they said, "Yeah, would you mind if we shopped you around to our various CEOs?" And I was like,
Okay.
"Yeah, sure." And so that's how I met David Bateman at SitePro. But a lot of that came from me focusing and building a brand of myself and kind of working into that.
And I think that's an excellent point to kind of conclude this because we've been talking about it now for about an hour and 20. And I'd love to hear like who's on. We got Brandon and Trey's listening too. I'd love to kind of get their feedback on
Yeah.
Clubhouse and what they thought about this experience. But I think that's a good point. But we were talking about, I mean, and to me, and I may be wrong, and I'm sure there's a professional way to define it. But if people are sitting there and don't know, well, shit, I don't know how to get a brand this, I don't know how to do a personal. Look, a personal brand isn't a fake identity. A personal brand isn't you on a. It's not your social online personality fake bullshit, whatever. What it is, your a brand. How to build your brand is how do you communicate effectively who you are.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. People hear brand, it's like it's scary. It's like, oh shit, I gotta think about this, think about that. No, building a brand is pretty much effectively communicating who you are as a person. And how do you do that on these online platforms if you wish to do that? And that's honestly, you can reach out to Roy and to kind of have a chat with him about that. You can reach out to me or find someone that you kind of look at online and just kind of respect and want to get to know them more and just connect with them and find out
Yeah.
talk to them, try to use them as a soundboard.
You
And
one
that's a
of
good
the
way to network right there.
One thing I would suggest is if you're looking for a starting point, Simon Sinek is an author that wrote a book called Start with Why. He's wrote several that I would recommend, but Start with Why will really help frame that mindset to get into, what is my why? What am I doing? And ultimately, he talks about a lot of brands in there, Apple, Southwest, some
Right.
of these others that you know exactly what you're going to get when you do business with those people. And ultimately, that should be kind of one of the goals.
I dig it. Well, Roy, I want to thank you for coming in and having a chat again on this Monday morning and doing this Clubhouse Live. I really appreciate it. And for those that are, oh, we have someone, I guess, that Ray, okay. Brandon Riley just raised his hand on Clubhouse. Looking forward to connecting with him. But again, everyone, this is Roye Strawn, the executive sales guy at SitePro. And we are looking forward to, if you want to reach out to him, you can find him on LinkedIn, Instagram, any social media
Facebook,
platform, Facebook,
Clubhouse.
Club, any Clubhouse. Yeah. So again, man, we appreciate you coming in and wish you the best, and we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, man.